The summer heat hung heavy over the plains south of the Carpathian Mountains. An Ottoman army, hardened by decades of conquest, moved north with absolute confidence. These were soldiers who had seen Constantinople fall, who had shattered walls believed to be eternal, who marched behind the most feared ruler of the age. Wallachia, a small frontier principality, barely registered as a challenge. It was supposed to be another campaign measured in days, not weeks. But as the column advanced, something began to feel wrong. The land grew quiet. Villages were empty. Fields lay scorched. Wells stank of poison. Then came the smell rot, decay, something unmistakably human. Scouts slowed. Horses reared. And as the army crested the hills near the capital, the illusion of dominance collapsed. What stood before them was not a battlefield. It was a message. Thousands upon thousands of human bodies suspended on wooden stakes, arranged with deliberate precision, stretching farther than the eye could follow. Some were long dead, swollen and blackened by the sun. Others still moved, barely alive, their suffering prolonged by design. Even veteran soldiers recoiled. This moment would change the course of an imperial campaign, and it forces a question history rarely confronts honestly. What kind of mind creates something like this, not in madness, but with purpose? To understand how such calculated terror became possible, the story must begin decades earlier, not with an executioner, but with a child. Vlad was born into a land that existed in constant danger. Wallachia was neither fully independent nor entirely conquered. It survived by bending without breaking, by shifting allegiance between stronger neighbors, by enduring betrayal as a fact of political life. Princes were installed and removed with brutal efficiency. Nobles plotted endlessly. Loyalty lasted only as long as it was profitable. In this unstable world, power was temporary and survival uncertain. Vlad's father, Vlad II, ruled under these conditions, attempting to balance Hungarian influence against the growing reach of the Ottoman Empire. That balance would eventually demand a price paid not in gold, but in blood. When Vlad was 11 years old, that price was collected. His father was summoned by the Ottoman Sultan and presented with an offer he could not refuse. Wallachia would retain its throne, but loyalty would be guaranteed through hostages. Vlad and his younger brother were taken into Ottoman custody, transported far from home, and placed within the imperial system itself. They were not thrown into dungeons. They were educated, clothed, and trained. On the surface, it looked like privilege. In reality, it was control. Every lesson carried a message. Every kindness came with a reminder of power. The brothers learned languages, theology, warfare, and administration, but they also learned something far more important. They learned how fear maintains order. Vlad grew up watching executions staged as public instruction. Punishment was never private. It was meant to be seen, remembered, repeated in stories. The Ottomans understood that violence alone was inefficient, but violence combined with spectacle could pacify entire populations. Vlad observed this carefully. Where others saw cruelty, he saw structure. Where others recoiled, he studied method. He learned that terror was not chaos. It was a system, and he learned what it meant to be completely powerless within it. While his brother adapted, forming bonds and embracing life at court, Vlad resisted. Records suggest repeated punishments for defiance. Whether through physical pain or psychological pressure, something fundamental took shape during those years. He internalized the rules of domination and stored them away, waiting. When Vlad was finally released and returned home, the world he expected no longer existed. His father had been murdered by Wallachian nobles. His older brother had been captured and buried alive. The betrayal was absolute. The message was unmistakable. Power in Wallachia belonged to those willing to destroy without hesitation. Vlad did not grieve publicly. He disappeared into exile, moving between courts, watching, learning, waiting. For years he studied the mechanics of rule, the failures of past princes, the weakness created by compromise. When he finally returned to seize the throne, he did so with a singular goal. This time, betrayal would not survive. His first major act as ruler revealed everything about his approach. Vlad summoned the boyars, the elite families who had long manipulated Wallachia's throne. They arrived confident, dressed in finery, expecting negotiation. Instead, they were confronted with consequences. The elders were executed publicly. The younger and stronger were stripped of status and forced into labor under conditions designed to erase their identity. This was not random vengeance. It was restructuring. Vlad dismantled the old power base and replaced it with one that depended entirely on him. Fear was no longer an occasional tactic. It was the foundation of governance. Executions under Vlad were never impulsive. They were deliberate, symbolic, and visible. Impalement became his signature not because it killed efficiently, but because it did not. The method was designed to extend suffering while preserving life as long as possible. Victims remained conscious, their agony prolonged, their presence unavoidable. Vlad understood that a quick death ends fear. A slow one multiplies it. He also understood that stories travel farther than soldiers. A single execution, properly staged, could control an entire region without further violence. These punishments were arranged with obsessive care. Stakes varied in height depending on status. Locations were chosen for maximum exposure roads, marketplaces, city approaches. Bodies were not discarded. They were displayed. Each one was a warning written in flesh. The population learned quickly. Crime dropped. Disobedience vanished. Vlad had achieved internal control through terror, but the consequences would soon extend beyond his borders. When the Ottoman Sultan demanded renewed tribute and submission, Vlad refused outright. This was not merely political defiance. It was psychological provocation. Ottoman envoys were mutilated and sent back alive, carrying visible proof of Vlad's intent. War was inevitable, but Vlad had no intention of fighting it conventionally. He knew his forces were outnumbered. He knew direct confrontation meant annihilation. So instead, he applied everything he had learned since childhood. As Ottoman forces crossed into Wallachia, they found nothing to fight. Villages were evacuated, food sources destroyed, water poisoned. Vlad turned the land itself into a weapon. His people were ordered into forests and mountains, denying the invaders sustenance. Then came the night attacks. Small units struck without warning, killing officers, burning supplies, vanishing into darkness. These raids were not meant to win battles. They were meant to destroy sleep, to erode morale, to replace certainty with paranoia. The Ottoman army advanced, but it did so exhausted, hungry, and increasingly afraid. The most audacious moment came during a massive night assault aimed directly at the Sultan's encampment. Disguised attackers penetrated deep into enemy lines, creating chaos, setting fires, striking command centers. The Sultan survived, but the message was unmistakable. Even at the heart of imperial power, safety was an illusion. From that moment forward, the campaign changed. The Ottomans were no longer confident invaders. They were trapped inside hostile territory ruled by a man who refused to play by accepted rules. When the army finally approached the Wallachian capital, the campaign reached its psychological breaking point. What they encountered was not resistance, but preparation. Thousands of impaled bodies, arranged with chilling precision. This was not the aftermath of battle. It was intentional design. Some victims had been dead for weeks. Others were still alive. The sight overwhelmed even seasoned soldiers. Accounts describe men vomiting, refusing to advance, deserting under cover of night. The Sultan himself reportedly stopped in silence, recognizing that he faced something beyond conventional warfare. Vlad was not attempting to defeat the Ottoman army. He was attempting to break its will. Within days, the invasion collapsed. The Sultan withdrew, leaving only a proxy force behind. Militarily, Vlad had achieved the impossible. A vastly superior empire had retreated without decisive engagement. Terror had succeeded where armies could not, but victory came at a cost. Fear does not distinguish between enemies and allies. Once unleashed, it consumes everything. Inside Wallachia, Vlad's rule grew increasingly severe. Merchants were executed for price violations. Villages were punished for rumors of disloyalty. The methods that had defeated an empire were now applied internally without restraint. Allies grew uneasy. Support eroded. When his brother returned backed by Ottoman influence, Vlad found himself isolated. Within months of his greatest triumph, he was forced into exile and then imprisonment by former allies who now viewed him as a liability. Years passed. Vlad lived in relative comfort, a prisoner in name rather than suffering. When he finally returned to power briefly, the world had changed. His methods no longer inspired unity. They inspired fear alone. His final reign lasted weeks. He was killed in battle under unclear circumstances, his head severed and sent to the Ottoman capital as proof of death. The man who weaponized terror became a trophy of it. Today, Vlad is remembered in fragments. Hero, monster, myth. Fiction has transformed him into something supernatural, something inhuman. But the truth is more disturbing. Vlad was entirely human. He was shaped by a system that taught him fear was power, mercy was weakness, and survival required absolute control. He applied those lessons with precision and proved their effectiveness. That is the real horror. Not the cruelty itself, but how well it worked. History prefers simple villains and comfortable myths. But Vlad's story resists that simplicity. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality. Terror, when systematized, can reshape outcomes. It can turn back empires. It can control populations. And once unleashed, it is nearly impossible to contain. The forest of impaled bodies was not madness. It was applied psychology. And that knowledge is what makes this story endure not as legend, but as warning. If we are willing to look honestly at the past, we see that history's darkest moments are rarely accidents. They are choices made under pressure, lessons learned too well, tools refined beyond restraint. Vlad the Impaler did not invent fear. He mastered it. And in doing so, he revealed something deeply unsettling about the nature of power itself. If you want to continue exploring the hidden, uncomfortable truths history often avoids, subscribe, because understanding how fear has shaped the world may be the only way to prevent it from doing so again.